Yo, what up guys, I'm Sammy and welcome back to the Soul Drop, and this is my first impressions look on the brand new Converse Shai 1. So it has two zeros in front of it, so maybe it's the 001, which I think is pretty cool. But either way, this is SGA's first signature shoe with Converse. If you guys didn't know, he signed with Converse and he's been wearing Converse for actually a couple of years. And now his first signature shoe is out. It came out with 3 colorways and I got the clay colorway, and apparently this colorway is inspired by his wife's eyes, which I think is really cool. It retails for $130, which also I feel like is a pretty good price. I think it's a little bit expensive for a first signature shoe, especially given the tech that you're getting, because especially for the cushion, you're not getting too much tech, you know what I mean? But you know, I feel like with inflation and with the price of everything going up, I feel like the first signature shoes are around 120 to 130 bucks, and also it's SGA, you know what I mean? So I guess it makes sense for the price, but it just kind of sucks because first signature shoes used to be like 110 bucks, you know what I mean? But now it's like, I feel like the starting price is around like 120 to 130. Now it's like pushing 130, you know what I mean? But anyways, if you guys do want to call, but try to leave in the free link in the description box. But it does seem like all the colorways are sold out on like the sneakers app as well as the Converse website. But if it is available, I'll try to leave a free link in the description box. But let's get it started right off with the tracciones. And here in the forefoot, we got kind of like the Converse logo, and then also we have this kind of like plastic piece with SGA's logo here in the heel as well. And then as far as the traction pattern goes, it looks very familiar, but I can't put my finger around it. It looks very similar to one of the other Converse shoes, right? But yeah, how does the traction feel? It feels terrible right now, guys. It feels so freaking bad. Just trying it on my wood floors, it just does not bite very well, and I don't know why. It seems like a pretty good traction pattern. It's kind of weird because the actual grooves are going sideways though, so laterally it's going this way. And it's just kind of just like really long rectangle lines, you know what I mean? So it's not even like a thick traction pattern or anything like that. It kind of like moves, and it looks like, or it feels like it'll move with the movement of your foot, you know what I mean? But just going forward, it like slides a lot, you know what I mean? So just for my first impressions, just on my wood floors, the bite seems really not good. Hopefully it breaks in though, you know what I mean? But also from all the other Converse hoop shoes, or like most of them that I've tried, the traction just isn't amazing, you know? And I don't know why they keep trying to, you know, keep going back to this pattern, but yeah, right now it doesn't seem very good. And it also does perform. Look at this. You guys can see all that dog hair and dust. I apologize for that, but it does seem to be like really picking that up really easily. So also we'll have to see on dust performance, but it doesn't seem like it'll be amazing either, which kind of sucks. So the bite just seems not so good, and this shoe has no squeak right now, right? Maybe just a tiny bit, but not that much. It's pretty much silent, and again, hopefully once I break it in, it does get to be a little bit squeakier, but right now it's not super loud. And of course, again, squeak has nothing to do with performance. And also for durability, it seems absolutely horrendous. Like you guys see these lines, these kind of like really thin nub lines? It's just a really soft rubber that they're using, right? It's very easily moved. And also where the ball of your foot is, which is kind of like the highway area, and also here in the heel, it's still using a really thin soft rubber. So durability also seems pretty bad in this shoe. One thing I do like, however, is that it's not an outsole curvature, but it's a little bit rounded here where the ball of your foot is. And also you can see the actual rubber coming up here on the medial side of the shoe. So you do get slightly better grip when you're doing these kind of like crazy movements, but it's not super curved, which kind of sucks, but it's a little bit, which I like a little bit, you know what I mean? So yeah, that's the main thing. The traction seems terrible right now, but again, we'll have to see on how it breaks in. Hopefully it breaks in. And I'm sure it will, because, you know, SGA's been playing in this and it seems like it has pretty good grip, you know what I mean? So there's the traction there. Moving on to the heel to toe transition, surprisingly, it's actually kind of smooth. I'm not a huge fan of the heel, right? So it doesn't feel super clunky, but it's definitely not super smooth or anything like that, right? So for example, like in the Menace 2 Pro that I just got, that shoe is really soft in the heel because the entire foam, the midsole, is exposed, right? And it's exposing the CQT Extreme foam, and it allows for a lot of compression, super soft and all that, right? But here in the Shai 1s, first of all, look at this, you know what I mean? The entire heel is caged, you know? So it's also a pretty stiff plastic, so it really doesn't allow for a whole lot of compression here in the heel, so it's a little clunky. However, it's not like a super boot-like clunk, right? It's just not super soft, not super smooth. It also has a little bit of a curve shape, so that definitely does help it a little bit, right? And also here in the forefoot, we do have a nice curve shape though. So I do like that. So the overall shape is nice, but not super duper smooth here in the heel. And also, here, look at this. Here in the forefoot, and also basically here in the middle of the shoe as well. It kind of surprising because, you know, like when you look at the shoe, especially from the pictures, it kind of looks stiff. It looks very, very rigid. It also looks kind of like bulky, you know what I mean? But it's actually very, very flexible, you know what I mean? The torsion support seems pretty good. You know, it is a little bit stiffer than normal, you know what I mean? Comparing to like, you know, the Sabrina 3s, the Luca 4s and stuff like that. So it is more on the rigid side of things for the torsion support, but overall heel to toe transition, especially here in the forefoot, it's actually pretty dang flexible, right? So there is a heel to toe transition. They're moving on to the cushioning setup. It's not that nice, you know what I mean? So they're not specifying what type of foam that they're using, but it's probably some type of Phylon, so it's actually not that nice. But also, again, it's entirely caged here in the heel, so you don't get that much heel compression either. There is a forefoot zoom unit, and it seems like it's top loaded. However, it's not super easy to feel. It just seems like your typical forefoot zoom unit setup, kind of like, you know, the PG1, the PG2. So it's the zoom unit's kind of like right before your toes, you know what I mean? So it's kind of like targeted there, and it bulges up a little bit, so I can feel my foot kind of like, it almost feels like a speed bump. You know what I mean? So it kind of bulges up, and then there is a tiny bit of compression, but it's not like super bouncy right now. I'm sure that'll break in. So I kind of like that, but overall, it's not amazing. Because also the core feel isn't that good either, right? So I put on the Jaw 2s, I put in the Sabrina 3s, the Sabrina 2s as well, just to compare, because, you know, those have really, really good core feel. Same thing with the Luca 4s, and the Shai 1s have the highest to the ground feel, right? So it's not amazing core feel, but however, it's still pretty nice. I would say it's like slightly better than average, more bordering towards just like average core feel, I would say. So yeah, they're making a pretty stiff, kind of like responsive feel, but like it's not amazing for the core feel, which is kind of weird. I would have liked to have a little bit better core feel in my personal opinion, but maybe with this type of foam, with this type of setup, it gives you slightly better impact protection compared to, you know, like the Jaw 2s, or maybe equal, because again, like the Jaw 2s and like the Sabrinas are using Cushlon, which is a little bit better than like Phylon, right? So maybe that's what they did, I don't know, but again, core feel just isn't as good. It's not amazing, it's just slightly better than average, I would say. And also the underfoot cushion, especially in the heel, isn't super nice, right? So the insole is alright. It's just kind of like your typical like foam insole, but it's also like not super high quality. It's not super thick. It's not super cozy, you know what I mean? And then underneath that, we have like a blue foam strobo board. So that's kind of nice, but then if you feel it, if you like poke it with your finger, underneath the actual like foam strobo board, like once you bottom that out, it's just pretty stiff. It's glued down and all that, you know what I mean? Compared to, you know, like a soft mesh strobo board. So like when you feel the soft mesh strobo board, it's just extremely soft, you know what I mean? But with this type of setup, again, especially in the heel, there's not that much compression underfoot. Also the heel compression, not that nice. It's pretty stiff. It's just the forefoot zoom unit is kind of nice, and also the core feel again isn't that amazing either. So it's pretty lackluster in my personal opinion, you know what I mean? I guess the only good thing is that it has a stiffer feel and also has like a more responsive feel, right? So there's the cushioning setup. They're moving on to the material. So the upper, they're using a shroud, obviously, right? And the shroud goes over the entire upper, and it also is using a zipper, right? And the zipper right now, it's a little bit hard to kind of like zip up and zip open, you know what I mean? So that kind of sucks, but I guess that's a good thing though, because for example, for me in the Donny 7, it would always come down as far as the zipper goes. So I guess if they made it a little bit more rugged, a little bit hard to actually like zip up and zip open, it wouldn't open up and stuff like that. So that makes sense, right? But then here in the toe box is actually kind of soft, you know, just a little bit, you know what I mean? I would say it's a little bit more rigid and a lot more supportive feeling than Nike's like whole hoop shoe lineup, you know what I mean, compared to like the Jaw 2, the Sabrina 2, Sabrina 3, Luca 4s, all the shoes pretty much, you know what I mean? So it definitely does feel a lot more stiff, a lot more supportive, but it's still kind of soft, you know what I mean? There's no pinching either, which surprised me. I thought this was gonna be a little bit uncomfortable, but just trying it on and also like flexing it here in the forefoot, it actually conforms to my foot well. It feels supportive but yet soft, you know what I mean? So I do like that. However, it's definitely not the most minimal feeling upper. It doesn't feel bulky, which surprised me as well. I thought this was gonna be a little bit bulkier, but it's actually I would say like around normal, you know what I mean? And then of course you do have that kind of like molded material here on the shroud as well. It's kind of like this pretty nice like polyester material, you know? And then underneath that, of course, we have a whole different materials. It's pretty much, you have one material and then another material, like a shroud over that, right? I thought it was gonna be open in some spots, so it's not as hot and like as thick, but it's actually a whole nother upper underneath the shroud, right? So it is a pretty thin material though. It's like a mesh material. But yeah, again, you still have that, right? And then going over that material, you have these kind of like eyelets, you know what I mean? So you can see the eyelets, it comes down here on both the lateral and medial side, pretty much acting as a strap. So you get better support and containment. So I do like that as well. And I do like how the entire shroud opens up, so you can really go in there and tighten each individual lace. You know what I mean? Sometimes shrouds, they don't allow you to do that. So I do appreciate that as well. But it's almost kind of like a one booty upper. You know what I mean? So you got a little bit of a one booty upper, and then you have another shroud over that. And then you do have the tongue, right? But the tongue is kind of separated a little bit. But because it does come up, it's this like Y shape. Look at that. You know what I mean? You can see his logo right over here. And I do like this dipped shape as well, because it kind of goes over the top of your foot and kind of like, it's pretty snug. It's kind of weird, you know what I mean? But also it has a nice bit of padding. It feels pretty comfortable and cozy right on top of my foot. So that feels nice as well, you know what I mean? And then here in the ankle area, it's actually pretty minimal for the padding, like especially on the sides. The padding is very, very isolated just on top of the ankle collar here, you know what I mean? And also, again, it's not super well padded. It's not very cozy either. There's a little bit more padding where your Achilles is, just like, you know, most hoop shoes do. But again, it's not super cozy at all. And then here in the back of the shoe, we do have a little bit more plastic. It's like an external heel counter almost with the Converse logo there, and it is pretty stiff there too, you know what I mean? So I really like how it feels on foot. Again, it's not the most minimal feeling material, but I do like how soft it is. I do like how supportive it feels as well. But also it does feel very, very hot. Like the ventilation is terrible, obviously. There's no airflow through this. But also the quality is great. You know what I mean? Nothing about the upper seems like super cheap to me. You know what I mean? One thing I don't like, however, is that it does crease pretty easily though. You know what I mean? I didn't even play in these. I was just walking around these today. So yeah, there is the upper there. Moving on to the fit. So I went true to my Nike size, and the shoe fits me very, very well. It's a really snug fit, right? So I say true to my Nike size because all my Nike shoes, or I guess, you know, if you guys didn't know, Nike owns Converse. So that's why I'm saying Nike shoes. And yeah, all my Nike shoes have been fitting a little bit short, so I go up half a size for all my hoop shoes from Nike. So that's why I'm saying true to my Nike size, right? But if you know what size you are from like any Nike shoes, then you should be fine going the same exact size here in the Shai ones. And as far as the length goes, I would say it's a little bit long. There's a little bit of length there, but I still don't mind that, you know what I mean? It's not super snug for the length, but I'm fine with that because here in the toe box, it's actually quite snug, right? I can barely curl my toes up, and also with this material, it's not super duper forgiving, you know what I mean? So I don't think it's gonna like get roomier once I break it in. So I feel like, you know, if you try the shoe on, that's kind of like the fit that you're gonna stay with even when you do break in the shoe. So I do like that nice snug feel here in the toe box. Also for the width, I really like how it feels as well. It's like just like really, really perfect, you know what I mean? It's not super snug or anything like that, but I can definitely feel the side of the shoe here like kind of touching my pinky toe, you know what I mean? So it's just a really nice width for me as well. So I would say it's like around slightly narrow. So yeah, the fit is very, very nice and snug for me, especially here in the toe box. So if you know what size you are in most Nike hoop shoes, you can go the exact same size and you should be fine. If you have a wide foot or you have a really thick foot and you kind of like want a roomier fit, probably just go up half a size, right? So there is the fit there. Moving on to the support and lockdown. I mean, this shoe feels extremely supportive, you know what I mean? Like the entire upper, again, you do have that really soft mesh material, like inner booty, and then you have another kind of like synthetic material, like shroud over that. Like you can see here on the lateral side and also over the kind of like the toe box, right? So that's extremely supportive, right? But also for lateral containment, you have the rubber coming up here acting as a sidewall, and here in the heel you have, I mean, you have all this. You know, you got the foam, you got the external heel counter here as well. So lateral containment feels extremely good. I mean, this shoe feels, again, like really, really supportive. One thing I don't like, however, is that this shoe is kind of like narrow. It doesn't even have an outrigger, you know what I mean? Which is kind of weird, you know, because like my foot is just like right here. Like shoes usually have have something like protruding out. I mean, this has a full-on outrigger, but shoes, even if they don't have an outrigger, it kind of like protrudes out here in the forefoot, right? But here in the Shai, it doesn't do that. You know, it's just like, it just kind of stops there. It's just like a very rounded shape as well. So lateral stability doesn't seem amazing in the shoe to me. So I am a little bit worried about that, but I don't think it's gonna be anything terrible, you know? And the overall heel lockdown seems okay. I mean, my heel is moving up and down just a tiny bit, but it's not like super bad or anything. But for some reason, it doesn't feel super duper locked down, even though you do have a pretty nice cupping shape. So we'll have to see on that. But the overall support of the upper feels really good, right? And also the lockdown seems pretty dang good because, you know, you can really crank down the laces. And then once you kind of like zip up the shroud, it doesn't, you know, make the lockdown that much better, you know, especially comparing to like a strap. But it kind of like just puts everything together, you know what I mean? So there's a supporting lockdown there. Moving on to the weight of the shoe, I mean, this shoe does not feel lightweight at all. I mean, this shoe feels kind of heavy, you know? I'm guessing like 13, 14 ounces. Yeah, 13.95 ounces. Let's check the other shoe. 14.1 ounces, so average around 14 ounces pretty much. And yeah, 14 ounces is pretty dang heavy, especially for modern day basketball shoes, right? So as far as like my overall average, pretty much like averaging every single hoop shoe that I've ever tried, it's around 12.5 ounces, right? But for the past like year or two, shoes have been getting extremely light, so I think like the average weight is around 11.5 to like 12 ounces, right? So 14 ounces is pretty freaking heavy, and this shoe feels pretty heavy. Like, thankfully, it doesn't feel super bulky though, which surprised me. I thought it was gonna be a little bit bulky, but it's actually not. Again, it does feel a little bit bulkier as far as the upper goes. It's a little bit thicker than, you know, like the Jaw 2s and the Sabrinas and stuff like that. However, again, it's not like bulky at all. You know, it's just more like a normal kind of like upper thickness, you know? But again, it does feel a little bit stiffer, right? For the overall sole of the shoe as well as the upper. So it has more of a supportive, stiffer feel, but also definitely a heavier feel as well, right? And hopefully the traction breaks in, you know, because again, the traction feels really, really not good right now. And if it does, I feel like it's gonna be a pretty nice kind of like responsive shoe. But overall, I'm not liking how it feels too much as far as the overall weight goes. So there is a weight there. Moving on to the aesthetics, I love it though. This shoe looks really freaking nice. Like, it looks like a shoe that you can definitely rock off court. You know what I mean? You can definitely just go out in these and it looks really, really clean. It looks really nice. I also really like the one color in the first three colorways that came out, you know, the all black, the all kind of like light blue, and also this one. You know, I'm a fan of like this like tan color, so that's why I got it. But I also really like how it looks, you know, with the shroud and how it like kind of like covers the laces with that laceless look. It just looks super duper clean, especially with this design, like this molded design on the shroud as well. It just looks really, really nice. And also in the back of the shoe, it has this kind of like shiny reflective look with the plastic, so that looks pretty clean too. So tell us what you guys think of these settings down in the comment section below. So wrapping things up, not a huge fan of the shoe right now. It's feeling pretty lackluster, right? Especially with the weight. The traction's not feeling good. The cushion feels very lackluster as well. So not a huge fan of it, but I mean, it doesn't feel terrible. But I'm not really wowed by it. I'm not like, oh dude, I'm super duper excited to try these out. The only thing I really like about the shoe is the aesthetics, I guess, and also it does feel pretty supportive. So once I break it in, hopefully it does get better and better, but we'll have to see on that. So anyways, that about concludes my first impressions look on the Converse Shai 1. Again, if you guys do want to call, I'll try to leave in the free link in the description box, but that's it. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.